And as an Englishman, what is this obsession with pumpkin pie? I mean, I ate it once and I thought, okay, there's apple here. I'm going to go with the apple in the future.
You know what, though? We've had English food. And welcome to the Three Wise Men of Divorce, Money, Psych, and Law podcast. Sit down with the California divorce experts, financial divorce consultant Mark Hill, marriage and family therapist Pete Russos, and attorney Shawn Weber for a frank and casual conversation about divorce, separation, co-parenting, and the difficult decisions real people like you face during these tough times. We know that if you are looking at divorce or separation, it can be scary and overwhelming. With combined experience of over 60 years of divorce and conflict management, we are here for you and look forward to helping by sharing our unique ideas, thoughts, and perspectives on divorce, separation, and co-parenting.
So, Shawn, the holidays are coming up.
that they are.
Pete, do people ever get kind of concerned about this when divorce is in the air, when the holidays are coming up and they've traditionally done things in certain ways and they wonder how their change in circumstances with their spouse might impact this?
I think every single time. This is, the year, I think of the year of firsts that for families that are going through a divorce, and what's it like to go through that first holiday season. And particularly if the decision to divorce is relatively recent, and the co-parents are trying to figure out, do you celebrate the holidays together? What's going to be better for the kids? That first holiday period, if a co-parenting plan is in place and the holidays have been outlined and scheduled and divided, what's it like for the parent who is going through the first Thanksgiving that they have gone through without their kids? There's just so much stuff around the holidays.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot. And I've seen people do it different ways, or they're in different stages of their divorce. Like the people that are just barely starting, maybe they haven't told the kids. So then they do Christmas together, Hanukkah together, and they're pretending that we're all a happy family.
And the worry they have about family members they've told about this who are going to have a couple of drinks and are going to attack the spouse, or even attack the spouse over what they've heard. There's camps being established.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that.
That's one thing I've learned in divorce is blood is thicker than water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people, when they hear there's a divorce, the automatic tendency is to divide into camps and circle around your relative. But
yeah.
That's a whole other podcast we could probably do is talking to extended family about how you want to divorce and how you want to be healthy about it. That could be a whole other discussion, couldn't it?
Yeah, because candidly, the family members are doing what they think is right and appropriate to protect their, relative, and they don't know what they don't know, and they're not at the table. So
right.
Well, and then there's you hit on this. There's that profound sense of loss that becomes more acute when there's an important holiday. You have those Norman Rockwell pictures that people have in their mind of what Christmas is going to be like, for example. And I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on this, except I'm getting divorced, so I'm not really going to be home.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about the other scenario that I've had just numerous times over the years where a couple has made the decision to divorce, and then they decide that they want their kids to have one last holiday together. And I understand that intention, but they're not necessarily doing their children any favors if they can't carry that off in a collaborative way.
Yes.
Right. It's complicated. It's a really complicated thing to try to navigate.
Or this one that I actually saw on a case where they held it together for the holidays. And then on New Year's Day, or shortly thereafter, they broke it to the kids. They were getting a divorce. And then these kids, they were teenagers, and they're like, well, what was all this stuff we did at Christmas? Were you just pretending? What was that all fake?
Yeah.
And it actually made it much worse for them.
Yeah.
So figuring out the timing can be an issue, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody quoted me a saying from, I can't remember which language it was, but a foreign language, which basically comes down to saying some families only look good in pictures, which is an interesting way to think about it in terms of, going through the motions for a holiday,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong, is there, Pete, with getting divorced and then still spending the holidays together?
No, absolutely. No, I appreciate you saying that, Shawn. Absolutely. But I think part of what we're talking about is when parents, because of their own, maybe it's a sense of guilt about the divorce or a sense of fear of how the children are going to do, that they try to enact something with maybe the intentions are right, but if they can't deliver, then it can create this, I think, different kind of confusion and pain on the back end of it.
Well, and it's much worse to try to have the holidays together and then be ready to kill each other and fight with the kids.
Yeah,
right? That's worse than than just if you just had them separate.
Yeah,
you don't want Boxing Day to literally become Boxing Day, right? Yes. Yeah.
Boxing Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or just maybe you're not fighting, but it's just so tense and awful.
Yeah.
Because kids aren't stupid. They can tell.
Yeah.
Right.
I've met with hundreds of kids over the years talking about their parents' divorce. And I'd say most of them will tell me, oh, we weren't surprised they were getting divorced. We're so relieved when we heard they were finally getting divorced.
Yeah.
That's a very common thing. And I think a lot of times the parents are more worried about the children when it's really their own feelings that are kind of coming out. Yeah. Oh, we have to keep it together for the kids. And really, they're trying to keep it together for themselves. And the kids really would benefit if you would just be real.
Yeah.
It's like the conversation we have around the house sometimes. Oh, the children
the children need
the house. You talk to the children and they go, we don't care where we live. We just want mom and dad to stop screaming at each other.
Right.
I've literally, I'm paraphrasing.
I had that conversation.
I've heard that,
Yeah. So. The kids always do better than the parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it in terms of, if the kids are at an appropriate age, what would it be like? Because it could be, I think, profoundly collaborative if parents in a position like that where they're not yet divorced are able to sit down with the children and have a very appropriate conversation about what's happening. And so let's talk about the holidays. Guys, what would feel right to you? Would you like us to celebrate it? Be able to have that kind of discussion. Now, that requires a level of collaboration and cooperation between the co-parents. And I think there's a certain amount of, in some ways, grieving that each person has to do, or prep work that each person has to do prior to being able to do that. But it is, I think, I've seen the consequences of what it looks like when right after the holidays a divorce is announced and kids are confused and devastated or feel like it was a bit of a bait and switch. All of these things that I've heard kids describe.
And kids really just want to know what the future is going to look like, and are they going to have a relationship with both parents? Yeah. I mean, that is, especially if they're younger. And so going through the motions of a Thanksgiving and having it be awkward and strange with no idea what's going to happen down the road because you haven't worked that parenting plan out yet, that I think is almost more damaging. Just saying, hey, we're doing something different this year.
Yeah.
By the way, my son did complain one time that he was required to have 3 Thanksgiving dinners and he wasn't going to eat the third one.
I was just going to bring that up, Mark, because I haven't had a kid complain yet about having 2 Christmases.
No, in fact, my son's comment was that he felt sorry for kids who weren't divorced because they only got 1 Christmas.
Right. I mean, the kids are not taking this as hard as the parents are. And sometimes I get parents that are fixated on the day. Christmas Day, or, I don't want to focus just on the Christian holidays, but I'm just using this as an example. Christmas Day, that's the day, and the kids are fine. I've even seen Santa Claus go to 2 separate houses. He'll do that. You can make that happen. You just have to let him know.
And sometimes the traditions in the families work. With my ex-wife, they did Christmas presents on Christmas Eve. We always did Christmas morning. It was easy to make that transition. He'd go to his mom's or to his grandma's on her side, and then I go pick him up, or she'd drop him off on Christmas morning. You know?
So when I meet with folks, I have them put a list together of the holidays and special days that matter to them.
Yeah.
And you'll be amazed what certain days come up, you know, like they won't care about Christmas so much, but Super Bowl Sunday, I had that was the day that they had to make sure that they alternated from odd and even years. You know, so if there's a day like that really matters to you, or maybe you don't celebrate the Christian holidays, it's the Jewish holidays or it's something else. Just finding out what matters to the family. And there are certain patterns that we see that are typical with every family, but some families do it differently. And then I'm surprised at what matters to them.
So what are the, I'm curious for you both, the legal/financial kinds of challenges that can arise around holidays?
Well, Pete alluded to one is where the parents try to outcompete themselves to buy nicer presents for the kids. And then, you know, they fight about it later. How dare you spend $1,000 on Johnny's birthday present or Christmas present? You knew I was only going to give him something worth $100. I mean, I'm sure, but that kind of thing, you know, it's an extension of the Disneyland dad concept.
Here's a really gross one that I actually experienced, where a child told me that the father said to the child, "I can't get you that Xbox because I'm paying your mother child support."
Oh, wow. Wow.
Right. We all just kind of go, that's not something a kid needs to hear, even if it is true. You know, you don't throw the other parent under the bus. Or maybe, just maybe, you can talk to each other about what presents we want to get the kids this year, like you did when you were married. And let's come up with maybe we both get an Xbox and it says from mom and dad.
And I've seen I saw another thing too, where the kid was given a weapon. A teenage kid was given a weapon, and the husband knew full well wife did not approve of weapons or guns in the household. And it was like just in your face. Is exactly what it felt like when I heard that occurred. You know?
Well, and that's the thing, you know, values. You know, some people are gun enthusiasts and some aren't. Some people have different political perspectives. Some people have different religious perspective. What if you have the cross-religion family where you have one person that's Jewish and another person that's Christian? My mind immediately goes to, oh, well, then all the Jewish holidays are going to be with the Jewish person and all the Christian holidays will be with the Christian person. But then I find out, well, you know, I'm Jewish, but, you know, that was a tradition in our family and it's important to them. I'd like to spend Christmas with my children, even though I personally am Jewish. Or I want to, you know, the Passover is wonderful. I want to be part of a Seder with my child. So then how do you, you know, and then people are like, well, why are you being so selfish? You're Christian. Why do you want the Jewish holidays? You know, and so you have to navigate that minefield. But if people can talk to each other and be kind of real honest about what matters to them, in a mediation context or a collaborative divorce context, we're uniquely situated to be able to help them, because the default at court, you know, you're asking about the legalities, Pete, is to just simply divide the holidays odd and even years. And it usually ends up, I've even seen courts divide all of the holidays on the same day.
So they do that with Super Bowl Sunday too?
They will if you want.
I know, but it's not something that's on their radar, and it's not something that normally attorneys would ask about, or that judges would say, by the way, do you care about Super Bowl Sunday?
It would only come up if they brought up in the pleadings.
I think it's this year you get the Super Bowl, next year you get the Pro Bowl. That's how they do it.
Well, the flag football game, as they've now made it. Yeah, that looks like fun.
Right.
We're time of year, we're thinking about the end of year holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Hanukkah. Here's the other thing I found myself thinking about is I'm curious for the two of you, the end of a calendar year can bring a sense of pressure as it relates to getting a divorce process done, perhaps, right? I think about tax implications and things like that. What's your experience of those kinds of pressures then complicating the holiday experience? Does that play out? Is that an issue?
You find it play out just in people's mood.
Mm.
So, at the end of the year, I get a rush of people that want to get divorced before the end of the year for tax reasons or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're rushing to get everything in before the calendar year ends. And that puts pressure on the family. And then I've seen that bleed I've seen parenting issues just blow up.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel like it's kind of collateral damage. It's a result of the increased pressure. The other thing, when I used to litigate, I learned not to go on vacation during the holidays because my phone was ringing off the hook with problems where people wanted me to go to court, ex parte for them, emergency hearings. Oh, this isn't working. And now that I'm doing things outside of court, we see that a lot less because people are being cooperative, collaborative. There's something about a mediation process that brings out better behavior. Whereas when it's a courtroom kind of a situation, people are adversarial anyway. And so then what happens is it becomes a zero-sum game. Oh, well, if he gets 5 minutes on Christmas, that means I'm losing 5 minutes on Christmas. That happens too. So yeah, I think legalities can, or just, we don't have as much money.
Yeah.
Because our cost of living is less, and that's making us stressed about the holidays. I mean, I've had holidays as a parent of 5 kids where we didn't have as much money as we did the year before. And it's stressful because you want to have a nice holiday experience for the kids.
Yeah. I find that the number of clients who want to get divorced because they want to file separate tax returns is pretty small. Generally, most cases, people are better off filing a joint return, even if they are, everything's done. They will wait till the beginning of January to file it so they can file a joint return for the current tax year. What I find is that a lot of people just want it done by the end of the year. It seems like it's emotional. It's a guillotine. I want it cut off here. I'm done with this. I can't go into 2023 and still not be divorced. That's what I see a lot of.
No, and there's another thing. January 1st through January 31st, I call the divorce season.
Yes.
And that is because people have made their New Year's resolutions to leave their spouse.
And they made it through the holidays.
He made a pass at your sister at Thanksgiving, and then you're done. Or maybe you just didn't, you were holding out for the holidays.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you can't handle it anymore. And so you resolve. We tend to do that at the beginning of the year. We're thinking about what we want to change in our lives. And so the divorce attorney's phone rings off the hook. And so I learned that is a time to, I also don't travel in January because I want to be available to folks that are going to call for business reasons, right? But also because they need help.
I have a friendly amendment, Shawn.
Yeah.
Take it through February the 15th.
Yeah, probably right.
Because Valentine's Day is sometimes the straw that breaks the camel's back. He didn't make it special.
Well, we did a podcast on that in an earlier podcast where we talked about how you can screw Valentine's Day up when the divorce happens.
But it's the final straw.
That broke the camel's back.
Exactly.
You said something, Shawn, a couple of minutes ago that I want to expand on because you were talking about the importance of people being able to talk about what's important to them. And I think the other aspect of that kind of communication that I think is vital to really increase the potential for divorcing partners to be able to be collaborative as they think about the holidays is for each person to be able to talk about what's important to them and why. Why is it important? I think being able to articulate the meaning behind it, why it has that sense of importance, that does, I think, increase the potential and the likelihood for people to be empathetic towards each other, to be compassionate towards each other, to be generous towards each other, particularly if they can establish a kind of give and take. I think the healthiest divorces that we see are those where both partners have the sense that the other person is willing to be considerate and empathic and generous. They're willing to be flexible in order to accommodate. Both parties operating that way are able to really, I think, create the healthiest possible kinds of outcomes. And it's interesting in the context of what we're talking about, that's also the kind of mindset and spirit that would allow divorcing partners to be together as co-parents, celebrating holidays with their kids together in the healthiest way possible.
I agree with that completely, with one friendly amendment, and that is if you have a very high conflict case. I found that Y tends to be more problematic because people start rehearsing all the dysfunctions that went wrong that got them here in the first place. But for most people, I think you're absolutely correct. If it's not a super high conflict case and the emotional functioning is on a normal level, we don't have like personality disorders or disordered thinking that's going on, then I think the why is very important because it leads to motivation, which helps people understand where am I coming from? What's my interest in this? I think it's a very important piece of dispute resolution, just understanding where the other person's coming from. So yeah, Christmas is important to me because, sorry, Mark.
Bringing the focus back to the children.
Yeah.
That's very powerful around the holidays because we always say, Christmas is for the kids or whatever. That's, you see that even in advertising. So to take it away from what do I feel like I'm losing to how can we make sure we give the children what they need, I think is a very powerful. I always say I use the children mercilessly in the divorce because candidly, they're the one thing that clients generally still agree on, I
have had the case where they fought about who had to take the kids at the holidays. It's like, no, you take them. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. I don't like the timeshare.
Right.
Well, and it's as you were talking, Mark, I was thinking about what's the experience like for the two of you when you realize that you're, dealing with divorcing partners who are so at odds with each other, they're unwilling or incapable of focusing on the children.
And we do see that.
Yeah,
you see that. Well, then I just make it about proposals. I take like I said before, I take the why out of it. We're going to care about why, who, what, where, when, how, never why, when it's a high conflict situation like that. And then I make it about proposals, and it becomes a lot like you make this proposal, now I can counter propose and
so
what I'm willing to do.
Working with you, I've seen you do that so skillfully when it's almost like an attack from one spouse to the other. Go, I think I heard a proposal in there. And you pull out that, and then we are actually into a process that can yield results as opposed to, well, if he's going to say all that, I got to get my licks in too,
People used to think I'm magic until you tell them my secrets. But no, it's true. I mean, a complaint is a proposal in disguise.
Yeah.
I've said that before. And so a good mediator, good therapist can reframe the complaint into a proposal. He always
she never
does this, or he never pays attention to the children on Christmas Day. So what you want is for him to be available and pay attention to the children on Christmas Day. That's what you're looking for. Yeah. Well, sir, are you willing to be available and pay attention to the children on Christmas? And then you can and then what does that look like? Well, what does paying attention to the children mean to you?
Yeah.
Do it like the Columbo approach when you're the practitioners. You just keep drilling.
Yeah.
The Columbo approach, just one more thing. Just one more question. And I'll play dumb. I'll get real curious. I don't understand. Okay, so when you're at home and it's Christmas time, what does it mean if he's paying attention to kids? What does that look like to you? What's happening now? What would be different? And just really drill down.
Yeah, because it takes it away from the complaint and the bitterness in order to try to at least identify what could change that. And that's what you're making them do there, Shawn.
Well, and you're helping the other party see what the person's interest is. It's almost like you're a translator. We see these complaints, and they're like an airplane that never lands. It's the same complaint, and they're not hearing each other. And if you can short circuit that and get it so that they can hear it from a different way or a different perspective, kind of get them off of their usual pattern, then you can start, then when people can see where she's coming from, oh, I get it. She's not just complaining about me. She really wants the children to have me more involved with them.
And I think it's often also in some ways unpacking. I think a lot of the dynamic is often that actually the partners understand each other quite clearly, but they do not agree. And so what looks like a lack of understanding is really, I'm not going to stipulate to that
I don't
kind
agree.
of positioning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so being able to unpack and I think related to the complaint, within the complaint is a proposal or the kind of absolute language that we'll hear clients use. The other thing that people are often way more comfortable articulating is what they don't want.
Yes.
So how to take that and recast that into
yeah. What they don't want the other person to do.
What I want is for him to not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another approach that a practitioner can use, is to, instead of turning it into a rule, so-and-so will not do X, you turn it into a value.
Mm-hmm.
It is important to me that the children have both parents available to them during the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, what does that look like regarding the father of your children?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it'd be very important for him to be available and pay attention to the children during the holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, that the value, instead of, I don't want him to just watch his football game.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a rule of a don't, it becomes a do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think for so many of those things, when we cast them in that kind of language, most of the time they absolutely agree that that's important.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the holidays are one of those things that are just, it goes to the core of what's hard with divorce. And that is that there's a sense that the family is broken, that traditions are lost, that opportunities are lost. There's the grief of what could be,
Mm-hmm.
So, I think communicate is the first thing out of the box that I would say. Communicate. Don't be so scared of the upcoming holidays that you don't want to talk about it, because they're going to come. Inexorably, they're on the way. So I don't want to deal with him or her around this. But then suddenly it'll be the week before Thanksgiving and people are getting invitations. And, well, why are we doing this? So communicate early. And really now is the time.
And focus on the children.
Yep.
And another piece that I pulled from that is recognize and be okay with there's a loss that you're experiencing, and that's okay. And recognize where your grief doesn't necessarily overlap with what your children are experiencing.
I think, part of the theme that we're talking about is resiliency too. What can people do in terms of their self-care, just to be able to maintain their sense of behavior, being appropriate, being respectful, being considerate. So self-care is really important. Holidays, drinking, being careful about alcohol consumption, those kinds of things for people to be tuning into. Mm-hmm. We've talked before about the importance of a mission statement for couples that are going through a divorce process, and the vision that they have for how they want to get through it, what they want to arrive at on the other side. I think using that same kind of process for defining how they want this holiday period to go, being able to talk with each other about what they want this experience to be for themselves, for the children, depending on the ages of the kids, to the extent to which they talk with the children about that.
Yeah. And a corollary to that, being willing to be flexible.
Yeah.
It may not be the way the Norman Rockwell painting portrayed it, but it can still be a wonderful holiday. And be flexible, be willing to compromise, and don't be rigid. And you're more likely to have success at the holidays. I do like what you said about self-care, though. I just kind of came back to that in my head, and I did, you hear the statistic that suicides increase during the holidays, and I think there's a reason for that. And I think suicides also increase during divorces.
Yeah.
or depression at least does.
Yeah.
So that's self-care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Make sure you're okay. And if frankly, if you find that you're not okay, that's why you should hire people like Pete.
Ask for help. Absolutely.
Ask for help, right?
Yeah. I think the holidays, these kinds of special times in life, they intensify either the anticipatory grief process if people are on the front end of a divorce process. And then post-divorce, there's this different level and kind of grief that people have to go through as they go through this year of firsts, and they're adjusting to a post-divorce lifestyle and what that means for them vis-a-vis the relationships with their children and family members, all of that. There's a lot of loss associated with those kinds of changes in ritual.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I have had reported, because I seldom meet with the children individually, but children saying things like, well, what's going to happen with all our traditions, all the things we always do? Are we going to go get pumpkins? Are we going to, are we going to go to grandma's, as we always do for Thanksgiving? And sometimes the parents just don't know. But that helps inform the conversation, asking, what do you think your children are going to experience here? That does two things. One is it gets us the information in order to be able to work with them, but it also has the focus back on the children away from what their concerns are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a lot, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It is, yeah.
And again, be willing to cut yourself some slack.
Mm-hmm.
Be flexible. Ask for help when you need it.
And don't overclove the pumpkin pie, for crying out loud, okay?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a debate in our household whether it's Cool Whip or the whipped cream.
Why does it have to be either or?
Are you saying reject the binary?
And as an Englishman, what is this obsession with pumpkin pie? I mean, I ate it once and I thought, okay, there's apple here. I'm going to go with the apple in the future.
You know what, though? We've had English food.
Yeah, but that was decades ago, before Gordon Ramsay, so shut up.
Well, my daughter is obsessed with the Great British Bake Off.
Some people are, yes.
I don't understand why you have to go to a beautiful, lovely estate and then cook everything in a tent outside. I've never understood what that's for.
Yeah, well, colonial thinking. What can I tell you?
Like the Renaissance Festival, we're going to do it in a tent, and then afterwards they'll be jousting. So anyway, all right. Well, Mark, if they want to talk to you about their money as it relates to the holidays and divorce and other things, what should they do?
Look for my website. Pacific Divorce Management is the company. The website is www.pacdivorce.com, PACDIVORCE.
And Pete, they're feeling down. They need some help dealing with their grief and the struggles of the divorce and the year of firsts. What should they do?
Easiest way to reach me is also through my website, peterroussos.com. PETER. I'm sorry. I'm starting to get my email address. PeterRoussos.com. PETERROUSSOS.com.
And if you want to deal with your dispute from a legal standpoint, go to WeberDisputeResolution.com. Again, that's WeberDisputeResolution.com. That's Weber with one B, like the grill.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, happy holidays.
Yeah.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Three Wise Men of Divorce: Money, Psych, and Law. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share with others who may be in a similar place. Until next time, stay safe, healthy, and focused on a positive, bright future. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Every family law case is unique, so no legal, financial, or mental health advice is intended during this podcast. If you need help with your specific situation, feel free to schedule a time to speak with one of us for a personal consultation.